Hey, how's it going, everybody? Tim with Rudder Marketing. We're really happy to have you here. Today is we're doing our podcast. So this is our first podcast on our new platform, Riverside. Riverside's a streaming video platform for webinars, podcasts, and all that stuff. So previously we were on Zoom. Here we are now. It's live streaming to our Facebook, LinkedIn, and looks like we had some technical issues with our YouTube. So we'll be uploading the videos to YouTube after this as well. So next to me over here is Sam Goodwin. Sam Goodwin, I had met him actually at one of our flight school partners. So Ideal Aviation is a local flight school here in St. Louis. Love the staff there. Love Bill and Kim running the show there, plus all their wonderful CFIs. And it's actually a place where I did my first discovery flight, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. And we were out at Ideal Aviation doing some video shooting. That's one of the things we do for Rudder Marketing is we do video creation and editing for our flight schools. And Sam Goodwin was over there training, and we interviewed him as a guest or as a kind of a student at the school, and then I just kind of noticed there's something a little different with Sam. I'm like, he doesn't seem like a typical guy. He seems a little special. You kind of recognize, I think, especially if you're a business owner or a leader, you kind of recognize that. I guess we have some type of different vibe. That's the best way to put it. We have a different type of atmosphere. When you talk to people and you just kind of have this weird aura whenever you're a leader or a business owner. And I just kind of got that right away from Sam. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Who are you? What's going on with you? And I connected him with later on LinkedIn or something like that. And then I later looked at his profile and everything, and found out a little bit more about his story and everything. I'm like, this is a pretty awesome story. So I'm not going to give away everything. That's kind of my small introduction to Sam there. But I'll let Sam kind of give his own intro there. So, how are you doing, Sam?
Great, thanks, Tim. Thanks for that. It's great to be here today, chatting with you. So, yeah, we met a few weeks ago and stayed in touch, and appreciate the invitation to be on the show today.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, that's pretty cool. It's a cool feature. We got a little Facebook Live stream and comments here. So, Kim is one of the Kim is the director of administration over at Ideal Aviation. She says that you're a great student.
Kim's great. I would not be where I am today with my flight training without Kim, because when I first reached out, she was one of the first people she got in touch right away and made the kind of onboarding very smooth. And I think that's probably, I would think, one of the biggest hurdles for people who are interested in doing that is just taking the first step and getting involved and finding out the basic things about what being a student pilot and what that process looks like. So shout out to Kim. Thanks so much to her for making everything easy.
I won't take away from your story and your whole spiel, but just you kind of mentioned there, and a lot of our people that watch this, a lot of people that kind of follow Rudder Marketing or work with Rudder Marketing, they're flight schools. They're businesses, and you mentioned that one of the things that really took it, did it for them was the fact that they responded right away. It's I think I was also on a podcast like the other day with Aviation Careers. And one of the takeaways for flight schools that we had was, we get all these leads coming into our business. We get all these inquiries about people wanting to be pilots and everything. And it's really the school that has the best customer service, the best sales experience, to be honest with you, that really gets the student. I think you just hit the nail on the head there. So I'm
For
glad
sure,
Ideal Aviation was there.
truly, like their Instagram helped with my decision and trying to figure things out. Just seeing, they're active, they're putting content out, they're kind of a real organization, because it's kind of hard to also, I don't come from I have zero aviation background, so I didn't know anything. So I came at it totally from square one, totally fresh, and all of those things together were important for kind of the path that I ended up taking.
Wow. Yeah. We'll get more into that as far as having that fresh student perspective, because a lot of times we work in the business, we work in the industry, and we're so entrenched with operations, whether it's, overhauls with engines, buying a new plane, HR, hiring new CFIs and all stuff, that we forget, a lot of flight school owners and, even myself, we forget what it's like to be a new student. What's it like to have the glazed eyes and oh my God, planes. Having that feeling of it's just the new exploration of aviation. It's just we'll get to that later. We'll get to the whole hey, how can we help flight schools out later? But let's kind of pivot here and kind of talk about you for a bit. So you are a guest speaker and you kind of have this interesting background and I guess just kind of tell us your story. So I mean, we can I don't know we have an hour up to an hour. It's not gonna take that long probably, but how about you break us down as far as where you started from? I think you had some hockey stuff originally, and then you kind of went on to traveling, and then from there you have an incident or a challenge that happened, and then from there you kind of moved on to running a business and all that stuff. So give us like the rundown. I'll let you kind of talk for a few minutes just about your whole everything. Like, and then what you do, what do you do, what happened in the past, and then what do you do now, and then plans for the future. How about that?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So, kind of a quick Reader's Digest version here. So, I'm originally from and grew up in St. Louis, and I went to DeSmet High School, kind of the classic St. Louis question, where'd you go to high school? From
Yeah.
there, throughout my childhood and teenage years, I played competitive ice hockey and was fortunate to have some success with the sport and went on to play Division One in college at Niagara University in upstate New York. And when I graduated from there in 2012, I ended up taking my first professional job in Singapore. And I originally only planned to be in Singapore for about 3 months, but I ended up staying for 6 years. And it was a fantastic opportunity, a great way to begin my professional career. I was working for a tech startup business and a regional NGO that was doing development work around Southeast Asia. And throughout those 6 years, I traveled as much as I could. It was in the heart of Southeast Asia. Had the world's best airport in my backyard with Changi Airport there, and I took advantage of the opportunity to explore as much of the region and beyond as possible. And I traveled quite a bit during those 6 years. I ended up traveling to about 120 countries, and at that point, I remember thinking, well, how many are there? And I learned there are 193, and so I thought, well, maybe I could go to all of them, and that kind of changed the style of my travel. And travel was always the best education I'd ever had. It was never about ticking boxes or checking places off a list, but I got to that point, had a little bit of a shift in style, and ended up deciding to pursue something that I thought was extraordinary. And a year later, in the spring of 2019, I had traveled to 180 of 193 countries in the world. And it was at this point when the next place that I was going to go to was Syria, a country that's experiencing arguably the most tragic humanitarian disaster of our lifetime. But one of the most significant things that I learned through my travels is that places that are negatively perceived, or that Western media tells us we're not supposed to like, these were places where I had many of my best experiences. And so I was confident that the same was going to be the case. And on May 25th, 2019, I went to the northeast region of Syria, and the Syrian regime took me hostage right off the street. They kidnapped me, and they accused me of being an American spy and collaborating with terrorists, and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. And they went on to hold me for they held me for 9 weeks in some pretty uncomfortable situations. And I write a lot about this in a book that I have being published. It's coming out on September 10th. I read a lot about what I went through and what my family went through, kind of through this experience. But thank God, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, the situation ended peacefully. And on July 26, 2019, I was released and came home. And in the wake of this, I've really been focused on trying to reflect and put things into context, and think about how what I experienced can be helpful to others. What did I learn that might be able to be a tool or a recipe or response to all of us when we're facing our own challenges, or entrapped in our own little prisons. And so I did finish my travel journey. So I've traveled to every country in the world, and also I now run my own speaking business. So I speak uh, full time, a lot of conferences, conventions, a lot of corporate work, and my primary pillar is uncertainty. So I talk about how essentially I was pushed to a point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things that helped me, and some things that I think can help all of us when we're facing uncertainty in our own personal and professional lives. And also, as I've been growing this business, just a few months ago, I did begin pursuing a private pilot license, and it's become a hobby and something that I've really enjoyed. It's also something that's been a real challenge. It's if any pilots are listening, again, I'm new to this, so I'm just giving my perspective, but it's just very regimented. It requires very precise movements, and it's been a real challenge. And I've learned so much thanks to Ideal and my I have a fantastic CFI, Dylan, who's been incredible, and it's been just a great challenge, but very rewarding as well. So that's something that's kind of worked its way into the picture in 2024 that I've really enjoyed. So right now, where my time is I have my speaking business. As I mentioned, I have a book coming out on September 10th. And then I'm also going to, in my free time, pursuing this pilot license, which has been a great experience.
You're gonna have some pushback from some of our guests. They're gonna say it's a pilot certificate.
Yeah, and actually, that's probably good to know, because I don't even really know how all this works. Maybe that's a better word. That's good to know. I'm here. That's a perfect example of learning something that I really just came into this about 5 months ago, knowing nothing. So I'm still a rookie.
I was at a flight school one time, and we're talking about like the copy on their website, and like, oh yeah, we got PPL, private pilot license, and then the guy was like, it's a certificate. Oh, just like, okay, man, I got it. It's pilot certificate. Okay,
it's good to know. It's good to know.
Yeah, know the difference between a rating certificate and a license, I guess. Whatever.
Right.
So you do a lot of talks now, and I'm not gonna, I don't have to give the whole, 1 hour, 2 hour talk that you do at conferences and events here, but you have this thing about embracing uncertainty, right? So I guess I kind of know what those two words means. Embrace means to really like be open to it and just take it in and bite the bullet, maybe, or take it by the horns, whatever you want to call it. And uncertainty just means not knowing what's going to happen. That's not knowing what's going to happen in the future, and just having that the unknowns, right? The known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. There's a lot out there, right? So, can you talk a little bit about what that actually means when you're giving these talks, when you're giving these things, and I guess how does that? I guess you take that with relation from your experience in Syria, I'm assuming. But like, yeah, what if just kind of brief us on what that theme means to you, and how that kind of affects businesses and leaders.
So my presentations are narrative driven and include all of the dramatic elements of my stories, but they also weave in and conclude with key principles that I think we can all implement into our lives. Essentially, when we feel the most lost, I think we have the best chance for a huge breakthrough. And that was my experience. I mean, people ask me all the time, Sam, if you could go back, would you still travel the way you did or still go on that trip? And on one hand, I would never want to relive captivity and wouldn't wish that on anybody. But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would never want to give up everything that's come from it. The opportunity to meet some remarkable people, to grow in character and in faith and in understanding of really, Tim, just the stuff in life that actually matters. And those two things go together. So I don't feel so much survivor's guilt as I feel what I would characterize as survivor's responsibility. And I frankly view the world through a spiritual lens. I feel like I was given this for a reason, and I feel very called to reflect on my experience and pull out lessons and messages that I think can be helpful to others. And when I think I mentioned it already, but essentially I felt as though I was pushed to this point of overwhelming uncertainty. It was truly a life or death situation. But through that situation, in that cell, in solitary confinement, I learned some things. I learned about gratitude. I learned about controlling the things that I can control. I learned about recognizing uncertainty as an opportunity. And these are the main lessons and messages that I try to pull out now and communicate to leaders of all walks of life today to help them embrace and manage their own prisons, their own feelings of being trapped in whatever situation they may be facing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have in my company in Rudder Marketing is having an attitude of gratitude, right? So a lot
Hmm.
of times we're very caught up with the day-to-day minutia. You know, you get
Hmm.
whether you're a flight school owner, a marketing agency, or speaking business, even a podcast business, whatever it is.
Hmm.
There's a lot of operations that get thrown there, and a lot of us, especially as leaders and type, I think most business leaders are kind of type A personality, right? We're kind of like get the stuff done now,
Hmm.
get it done now. And a lot of us are very goal oriented, results oriented. Like we need this thing done like in this time frame, right? And I think that's pervasive throughout all businesses. And I think when we focus so much on the goal, right, and we never really reflect on how far we've gotten. I think and then really that's part of where gratitude comes in. You say, oh, why can't I get this revenue stream? Why can't I get these amount of pilots in my school? Why can't I do this? And you focus on that number so much, but then you realize, hey, we trained X amount of pilots last month. We had these many solos this last month, or for us, we partnered with X amount of flight schools last month, or this school in California just joined Rudder Marketing, and we're really happy to do that. And if you don't really focus on the wins, is another one thing we kind of do. If we don't focus on the wins every day, if we don't have an attitude of gratitude, then we're not really going to be able to focus on getting results. Because I think that's it's kind of I don't know. Do you kind of agree with that, or how does that kind of work with I guess your thought process?
Totally agree. By the way, I meant to mention this. I love the name of your company, Right Rudder Marketing. And I have to say, 5 months ago, I wouldn't have even known what that meant. I had no idea. So, but now I understand it because Dylan yells at me every time I do a power on stall. He's like, "More right rudder, more right rudder, more right." And I'm like, okay, I understand now, and it's been a fun experience. But I totally agree. The problem or the challenge that I think a lot of people have with gratitude is they lack perspective, and I'm
Hmm.
trying to use my experience to get people to practice reframing their perspective, especially when facing challenges and uncertainty. If there was, I'll ask you or anyone listening to this, if there was a list that ranked every person in the world based on overall success and happiness from 1 to 8 billion, where do you rank? Where do I
Number
rank?
one.
Right. So being content and grateful for what we have and not envious for what we don't have while still being ambitious is a different way to think about being satisfied.
uh, One of the exercises they have in my I'm part of a coaching program. So what it is it's a mentorship coaching program, advising program where it's a bunch of marketing agencies, not so much aviation related or anything like that, but a lot of that's how I kind of do my continuing education. Is that I always try to learn new techniques, new trends in the market, new hacks, for example, that we use for SEO or pay per click, website design. There's a lot of new stuff coming out, especially with AI, by the way.
Hmm.
And anyway, so this group, one of the big things we talk about is, writing down your goals and really understanding where you come from and knowing that really having an ideal life. Like, what is your ideal vision of your life?
Hmm.
Especially as owners or founders, leaders, you could be a high manager in like a corporate, that's kind of what I was before I did all this. I was in corporate manufacturing. Having a clear vision of what your life wants to be, and then shooting towards it. Because a lot of times you get, and that's not talking about the exact goals like, like money or revenue or profit or whatever. It's like, where do I want to be? Like, what
Hmm.
do I want to have this type of house? Do I want to have this type of home? Do I want to live in this country or this state even? Where do I see my family even? Like, do I see myself, with kids, with family, or if I have kids, do I see them, do I see myself spending a lot of time with them, or am I focused more on work? Um, my friends, my coworkers, my colleagues, these are all different kinds of questions to ask yourself. Spiritual, how involved am I with philanthropy and with church or whatever it is? These are all types of questions that we have to ask ourselves as leaders and business leaders, and even people, not even just owners and founders, but even like employees in a company. We have to ask ourselves like, what do I want in my life? And then when you actually create that mission statement, not for the company but for yourself, you're able to project that in all the facets of your life. I think that's kind
Hmm.
of what I learned at least. So I think a lot of the stuff that I think the more you kind of get into this business like mindset and like leadership advice, you kind of hear the same thing over and over again, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of like a rewash or replay of with just different words. But really, it's the mindset is the most powerful thing out there. The mindset is really the most powerful thing that you have as a business leader, as an employee, as a person in this world. If you don't have the mindset to be successful, if you don't have the mindset of we call it a what do you call it? You don't want to have a scarcity mentality. You want to have an abundance mentality. There's always opportunity out there for growth, for partnership, for collaboration, and that's one of the things that I'm always whenever I travel, regardless it's another country, another state, another flight school, or whatever. I always have an open mind as far as who I'm talking to, and I'm by nature a very introverted person. I don't I might not seem
Really?
that way, but yeah, I was very introverted, especially in
Mm.
high school. I didn't really talk to many people, and as I kind of grew, and I just had to put myself out there, I had to be uncomfortable. I had to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and
Mhm.
just be able to reach out and talk to people, and especially when I was younger, like dating was a really fun experience. Now I'm married, I love my wife and everything. I don't know if she's listening or not, but what do you call it? Having to go out there and ask the girl out. This is before Tinder and all this stuff was out there. I would have to go out and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that would make my whole body would explode inside. I'm like breaking inside. Yeah, being uncomfortable. Putting yourself out there, having attitude of gratitude. I love these things that you kind of talk about. Um, okay, let's kind of pivot here. So.
No, I was going to just quickly mention, I think you make a lot of great points about being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, and that balance there. It's interesting. I think being an entrepreneur, oftentimes it's about leaving a 9 to 5 job to work 24/7. And I don't know if people sometimes always recognize that, but it's also about it's about living a few years of your life in a way that most people won't, so that you can potentially live the rest of your life in a way that most people can't. And those risks are so important. I think taking risks in our lives are so important, but it also comes with a balance. All of those things that you talked about managing family and all the other things that go into it is a challenge. And if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Do it right. That's what when I will say. So you talked about going from 9 to 5 full time, and I don't know if that really applies to a lot of flight school owners. 'Cause a lot of them have been in it for a bit, and a lot of
Hmm.
them maybe. I have a mix of flight schools I've worked with. So some flight schools they've been in the business for a while, and they've just been established. There's other flight schools that are a lot of them are the owners are like pilots, like airline pilots, and then they kind
Hmm.
of do this as like a kind of sideline and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then for a lot of other business owners out there, and because a lot of people listen to this stuff, switching over from a 9 to 5 job to like going on a business was probably one of the most nerve-wracking decisions I've ever made in my entire life. I didn't really
Hmm.
share, my story too much when it happened, but I was calling my father and like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to do this because I had a really good job before.
Hmm.
I love Rudder
Yeah.
Marketing, by the way, but I had a really good job before Rudder Marketing, and it just had this opportunity in front of me, and then I just going to the deep end, just taking the dive was really I'll just say it was scary. I was calling everybody. I'm like, I don't know if I
Hmm.
can do this, and I said, you know what? I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the risk. So I went ahead and pulled it. Um, Talking about
One of the things I'll say about and I would love to hear more about your journey and everything that happened. But I think one of the biggest challenges that people in their 20s and 30s have is a poor relationship with time. And what I mean by that is this: every anybody in their 20s and 30s, they could do nothing right for 15 years and still be young. I know these people, they'll do lots of things right, but take risks, be creative, think critically, make mistakes. I think mistakes are proof that you're trying. You don't have to be reckless or irresponsible, but this is the time to figure out what you want. I think all of us are we have the are we're talented and well equipped, but it's like, do you have the guts to be uncomfortable and take risks? And that's where I kind of get back to the thought of being an entrepreneur. It means living just a few years of your life now to potentially to live in a way that a lot of people won't, to then potentially live maybe the rest of your life in this way that a lot of people can't.
One of the biggest challenges I have in sales, I'll talk about sales for a bit. I talk to a lot of owners, business owners, and it's I think about my competitors. I think as a business owner, you always have to think about your competitors. You always have to think about, hey, what other options are out there in the market? So if I'm a flight school, what other options are in the field? If I'm an agency, what other marketing options are there? They can go on Fiverr, they can use a local agency. I mean, you know Rudder Marketing has its own, unique value proposition with us being aviation focused, pilot owned, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also other options out there. I'm not the only one out there doing marketing, right? So I always kind of weigh that in, like, why, if let's say I lose a sale, 'cause that happens, that happens, right? It's part of business, part of growth. You lose, you don't win sometimes. And I kind of think about, I do what's called a post mortem. I don't know, have you heard of a post mortem before?
I mean,
So
generally, yeah.
it's like a process of looking back on, like, the event that happened, and, like, it could be positive or negative. It could be a good event or a bad event. And you kind of look back on the event and you look at what you did, what the results were, and how do we improve it for the next go around, right? Same thing with flying. Let's say you're learning how to land. You're going in for a landing. Maybe you didn't use enough right rudder, so you kind of landed like one of these, the porpoises and everything.
Mhm.
The best thing is, I know when you're in the moment in the cockpit, you kind of just say, "Oh my God, just try again, try again." But it's that post meeting brief that really matters. It's that post meeting brief where the CFI
Yeah.
takes you down, and they do that post mortem exercise with you, and they say, "Okay, well, when you're landing, your crosswind was coming from the right, but you still, had you left, they talk about the stuff, and your speed was a little too fast. That's why you porpoised and stuff."
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever done one of these before.
Uh, yes, I've done plenty of
Yes, I
those.
have.
Yeah, thankfully
So,
Dylan helped me out.
so we're talking about competitors, right? We're talking about competitors in the market, whether it's a flight school student thinking about, what school to go to, or, even a corporate event trying to think of, hey, what speaker should I hire? There's always competitors, right? But the number one competitor that I think now, it used to be like other agencies or other flight schools would be the main competitors. I would think it was. I think the number one competitor is actually the person itself in complacency. They don't want to move. They don't want to change. They don't want to actually do the thing. So it's flight
Mhm.
training. How do we convince them to, like, pursue this? If it's a
Mhm.
flight school that's I'm trying to partner with, it's like, how do we convince them to, or how do we tell the story of, like, hey, if you really want to reach your goals, you're gonna have to do something different. What's
Mhm.
Albert Einstein's, like, number one expression or something? It's insanity. Something like
Well,
that, right?
yeah, I mean, I think so much of it is about understanding what each student's goals are, and kind of just general business around obtaining clients and keeping them happy and making sure that you're fueling what they're looking for. But um, I could certainly relate to the point you made about the landings for for sure. Still working on some of that.
You said you had a story regarding, I think you sold it a few weeks ago, or you went up a couple times, and you had a fun story you wanted to share.
Oh, well, so actually, yeah, that's kind of relevant to the landings. It was a few days ago. I was on my second student solo. Again, I'm very new to this, but I'm having a great time, and it's been an awesome hobby. But I was coming back from kind of the practice area back into the pattern. I was talking with Tower, and I entered the pattern midfield, and right at about that point, Tower called me back, and they said, Cessna 51827, can you make a short approach ahead of a Cirrus on a 4 mile final? And I, I, I didn't, I probably didn't respond as quickly as I should have. I waited a few seconds to kind of think about what I wanted to say. But then I responded back and I said, I can, yeah, I can make a short approach, 51827. And I didn't know this until later, but Dylan, my CFI, he was on the ground, on the ramp, on the radio listening to this. And apparently, again, I learned this later, when I responded to Tower like that, he thought like, gosh, Sam, like, no, don't accept a short approach on a student solo. Anyways, I wasn't in touch with I didn't I didn't know about that until later. But anyways, I cut the base turn, made a pretty short approach, and came in really high and really fast. I think I came over the numbers at like 88, and I was flying a Cessna 172, and typically it should be 65.
67, yeah.
67, yeah. And so, anyways, I was landing on a 7,000-foot runway, so I just was able to bleed it all out and level off, and was able to land. And I recognize that for any like experienced pilots listening to this, they're probably like, that's like no big deal at all. Why are you even like saying this, whatever? But as on my second student solo, to have kind of that happen and communicating with the Tower, trying to gauge everything, it was a little bit of a memorable experience. And then I think I had, it was a little bit bouncy. I didn't hit the ground. I just kind of ballooned a little bit and then landed. But it was a great experience and good practice. And there's just never 2 days that are the same. And it's just constant learning with the flight training. And I really enjoyed. And one other thing that I'll mention is you were kind of making this comparison between kind of flight school and business. And one of the things that I think a lot about is the way, maybe in a similar way, the ways that being a competitive athlete my whole life has helped me in business and my professional life. And also truly with flying, I think the preparation is so important. I mean, the way that I used to prepare for to play a hockey game, the practice, the preparation, the being able to block out distractions in our lives in order to focus, these types of things have been really key. And it's been fun to see kind of all of them come together, because especially early on in my training where I'm at right now, it takes a lot of focus. Like I have to go there, really kind of block out a lot of things. I try to be as focused as I can, and I still screw things up all the time, but it's nice to be able to lean on these different things in our lives to help us in our business and our hobbies and our personal lives, whatever it may be. And there may be some similar overlap between kind of flying and business as there is for me kind of being an athlete and flying as I found. So it's fun to kind of connect some of those dots.
I think it's all about tenacity. It's really about just keep going at it. Don't give up. I think it's the hardest part for
consistency.
Because here's the thing:
so important.
we expect it to be like this. We expect it to kind of just keep climbing up and up and up. But reality, whether you're in business, whether you're flight training, whether playing hockey, sports, it's like this. You're gonna go up and down, like left and right. You're gonna go. It's kind of a wave, right? And hopefully, if you're doing it right, the average is increasing. So that's kind of my take on it. Now, to go back in your story about
positive, yeah,
the trajectory is positive. The story that you told about this cutting a short final here, I think the main issue is it's a Cirrus pilot.
See, I don't even really know what that joke means. Do Cirrus pilots have a history of? I'm new to all this. I don't even know what that means.
On the webinar or the podcast, but I guess I could speak on the job. I'll give you some aviation kind of slang here.
Yeah, please.
So Cirrus pilots are kind of known, and I love Cirrus, by the way. Cirrus is a great aircraft. So before I bash it, let me just say I love the aircraft.
Okay.
It's kind of known in the industry as this kind of posh, rich kind of like aircraft, and then because of that, there's a lot of errors that happen. There's a lot of automation that's on there. So if you've ever flown a Cirrus, there's a lot of even the parachute. The parachute's a very big like talking point with a lot of flight schools or not pilots and CFIs. A lot of them like, why are you flying with a chute? It's because it's kind of like
Wait,
Caps on,
what's
how
the
about caps
story?
off?
What's the story with the parachute?
It's like, why do I
Sorry,
need to even land it?
I actually just don't know any of these things.
Ah, it's good. It's good. We're doing it live, so um, it's like, why do I even need to fly? Why do I even need to land if I have a parachute? So there'll be a lot of jokes where like, oh, it's like, they'll say, oh, he'll just pull his parachute because he doesn't know how to land. It's like, oh, three knot crosswind. Oh, pull the chute.
Okay,
It's
okay.
like it's kind of that.
Oh,
It's kind
okay,
of that
okay,
thing.
got it,
So,
got it.
it's
Yeah.
kind of that, and then a lot of it's like because a lot of them are more upper class, I guess you can say, or higher income, wealthy. They don't
Hmm.
really put a lot of focus on the core stick and rudder skills. They kind of focus more on
Uh,
automation. So you have a lot of them doing like a 10-mile final or something like that, or a really wide
okay,
pattern. Like
I
I'm
see.
not CFI, so I'm not gonna try to talk about my aviation skills or anything like that. But you
Okay.
really want to keep your pattern as tight as possible.
Hmm.
Because if you think about this, if you have an engine out, then you want to be able to land as quick as possible,
Yeah,
safely as
yeah.
possible. If you have a
I mean,
really wide pattern, let's say you're doing like 1 mile base or something like that, if your
mhm.
engine goes out, then you're kind of effed. So
Yeah, might
that's what
not be
my
able to
CFI
make the
tells me.
runway.
So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, same. I mean, I keep hearing, a perfect pattern means a perfect landing. So keeping that real
right.
tight, keeping it, and that's again kind of goes back to being stuff I learned being an athlete, kind of translates there. But that's interesting. As I mentioned, I'm still learning so much, including on this call right now. So now I know about Cirruses. I've never flown a Cirrus. I don't really know anything about it. So that's
It's a
good
beautiful
to know.
aircraft. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful aircraft. I love the aircraft. It's just there is some type of
sure.
it depends on who
Yeah.
you talk to. So some people are like, oh, I love Cirrus. Cirrus is great. It's a great platform, great training platform.
Hmm.
For a lot of people, it's out of reach. I mean, it's like $300 an hour.
Hmm.
I've flown one before. They're great. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
potentially, if I was thinking about for right rudder marketing, if we buy a plane, which was probably coming up soon,
Hmm.
what should it be? I'm looking at Pipers, I'm looking at Cessnas, but I'm also considering like the Diamonds and also the Cirruses because I mean, I'm
Yeah.
looking at them and they're really great platforms. And the main thing is like, it's the high cost. It's the main kind of driving factors. Like as far
Yeah.
as decision goes, I'm like, are you going to spend $500,000 on a Cirrus, or are you going to spend a couple hundred K on a Cessna? It's like,
Yeah. Planes are
now
getting more
granted,
expensive now, aren't they?
they are. So that's kind of what our mission and vision is for Red Runner Marketing. Is we want to actually decrease the cost of aviation. We're hoping
Yeah.
that by working with a bunch of flight schools, we're hoping that by working with flight schools all across the U.S. that we train more pilots, and if there's more pilots and more people in general aviation, then the
Yeah.
manufacturers will have actual what do you call it? Like it's cost of scale or delivery of scale. So the bigger you get,
Yeah.
the more pilots that are out there, the more demand there is, and the cheaper it is to manufacture.
Yeah.
It's easier to make 1,000 Toyotas than it is to make one Toyota. So
Hmm. Yeah.
um, that's kind of like part of that. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
Cirrus is great though, but
Hmm.
it really depends on who you talk to. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
cool. So we are at about 30-40 minutes here. I typically wrap around, kind of close it up and all that stuff here. I think
Yep.
there's some great takeaways here. I love the attitude of gratitude, embracing uncertainty, being uncomfortable, taking a risk. These are all things we got to do. Talk about this before we close. Can you talk a little bit about your business and if people want to reach out to you, if people want to buy your book, or why should people buy your book?
Hmm.
Just do a little self promotion here. Come on.
Well, I don't know how good I am at that, but I will say, if anyone wants to reach out, I would love to connect. I'm on social media. You can find me on the normal platforms. Feel free to reach out anytime. I would I would love that. Why should you read this book? On one hand, it's an unforgettable story that includes a travel journey to every country in the world, high stakes diplomacy, heads of states, celebrities. On the other hand, it's about what we all learned through this experience that we believe can help others today. It's about how we can all turn our own challenges, personal, professional, our own challenges in our own adversities, challenges into assets, into these tools that we can use when facing obstacles. So I think on one hand it's entertaining and you'll enjoy the story. On the other hand, there are some key takeaways that I think can be helpful in our personal, professional, or spiritual lives, whatever it may be. So I hope that you have the chance to check it out. and would love to connect.
It'd be a great opportunity actually for flight schools. Just thinking out loud here and brainstorm. This is kind of on the spot here. Um, you know, helping, if you gave a talk to potential like a ground school class that's thinking about becoming a pilot, because a lot of times, a lot of flight schools, what they do is they do, I don't know if Ideal Aviation does this, but they do like a group ground school. They bring people in because it's a lower cost, it's a lower barrier to entry. So you think about your private pilot certificate could cost $15,000-$20,000 or less. It's kind of a high ask. It's kind of a high ticket sale. But the group ground school usually is a little lesser. It's usually about maybe $500,000 less. Some below $1,000 usually for a group ground school where a CFI or an AGI will walk through the basic core concepts, meteorology and weather and regulation, aerodynamics, and all that stuff. And they prepare the students for a written exam. And what I've seen in these group ground schools is that, I might have, let's say you have 20 students in the group ground school. We'll try to emphasize everyone should take the FAA written exam, but probably only a fraction of that 20 will actually take, maybe 5 or 6 will take the written exam, or actually make it to the end. And then out of that 6 or let's say 7. That's 7 people take the exam. Only about like maybe 1 or 2 of those students will actually become a certificated pilot. So there is a high washout rate in aviation. I think that's kind of it's part of the nature of the business, nature of the beast, because it is demanding. It is taxing on the mental, on the mind, I think. So maybe as a speaker, you can deliver these things about motivation and mindset and being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and embracing uncertainty to these new students, these new pilots or new prospective pilots that are thinking about aviation. So that might be a good kickback, or not kickback, but a good call out for flight schools. If you are thinking about having a motivational speaker for your flight school, then that's Sam Goodwin.
Yeah, would love to do that. I speak to a range of clients, a lot of corporate work, but from all industries, from financial services to insurance to athletes. I've done work with the NHL and the NHL Players Association, do work at universities with students as well. So would love that opportunity if it presents itself.
Cool. Yeah. So I think his website's in the description. I think samrgoodwin.com.
That's right. Yeah.
Social media platforms are also there. Maybe just comment on there and just add yourself on there as well. Before we close, this is kind of like the PS of the message, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
I myself have also traveled a decent amount of countries, so I have my own opinions on different countries and places. And you go into all 193 countries? Yeah. I guess. What's your most favorite country outside the USA? Because we love USA.
Right. So I typically say after the United States, I often say New Zealand. I think it's the most naturally beautiful place in the world. And so if anyone is interested in being outdoors and the natural beauty of the world, I think it'd be tough to beat New Zealand.
New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand, by the way.
Were you really?
Yeah, Christchurch. Wow. New Plymouth, Christchurch. Yeah, it was okay. Crazy running around there.
Why were you down there?
My father. So I come from an immigrant family. Yeah. And we what do you call it? They're from the Philippines. They came from the impoverished nations of the Philippines, and they didn't really have much opportunity there. And their biggest dream was to chase the American dream, which is to come to America. And I don't know if you ever gone through immigration processes for America, but it's a lot of bureaucracy. I mean, it's like even I know we have a bunch of illegals, and I don't want to talk about politics too much, but I know the border isn't secure. I'm not and all that stuff. But to do it legitimately, to do it the real way, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's really pretty hectic. So there wasn't much opportunity to go to Philippines straight to U.S. However, my father, love him. Shout out to my dad. He had opportunity. He was a computer engineer. That's kind of how I got my background with software as well. He had opportunity to work in New Zealand, and so we went to New Zealand. That's where I was born, and we lived there for about 6 years or so. And finally, he finally was able to realize his dream of coming to America. And then he came to America back in, I want to say 1996, 1997, roughly. Okay. And then I was pretty much raised in St. Louis after that. So I was raised in St. Louis, and then they finally become naturalized, I think, in 2010-ish or so. 2007. I think they became naturalized citizens, and then So technically, I'm a dual citizen because I was born in New Zealand and I was also raised in the States. So um,
Cool.
very
Very
cool.
cool.
One more. So one more story about or one more question about like favorite country. Latin. Okay, so I have two. I want to know
Yep.
what your favorite country is in Latin America, like
Yep.
South, Central, and South America, and then also what your favorite country is in Asia, Southeast Asia, or North Asia.
Okay. So in Latin America, I would maybe say Chile. I've had a really great time in Chile, in Santiago, um, in in San Pedro de Atacama as well, and I enjoyed go. I actually was there one time in July, but it was the winter there, so went skiing at Val Nevado, just outside of Santiago. But really fantastic people, very hospitable, very warm people, and that's also a beautiful country with an incredible coastline and a great place to visit. And then in Asia, I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I lived in Singapore for 6 years, but that is kind of Asia light. It's kind of Asia for beginners, so to speak. It's like kind of this bubble inside of Southeast Asia. But actually, I would say the Philippines is my favorite country in Southeast Asia, uh, for a range of reasons. Again, it's a naturally beautiful place, but incredible hospitality. Also, I'm Catholic, so I tend to find that I have quite a bit in common with people given the Catholicism in the Philippines, and just really fun people. They also tend to, uh, generally speaking, they speak English a little bit better than people in other Asian countries, so it's a little bit easier for native English speakers to build a relationship with Filipinos. So for a range of reasons, I co-founded an NGO in the Philippines in Cebu, and worked with under-resourced families in a range of places in the Philippines, and have spent a lot of time there, kind of all over the country. So would probably say the Philippines.
As a Filipino,
Yeah.
I'm so hard. I'm so I guess I have one last one. I guess
Yeah.
we covered most contents. Might as well keep going with it, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess what do you call it? The Middle East versus or Eastern Europe versus Western Europe. What's your favorite kind of countries there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I mean, as far as Western Europe, really, it's kind of hard to go wrong in Western Europe. That's a great place to begin traveling. It's very easy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very convenient to get around. There's a lot that can be seen in a small area. Europe's geographically very small, so a lot can be seen by not moving very far. So really, all of Western Europe is a very good place to start for people who are traveling, who are kind of starting out to travel. And then, yeah, as far as the Middle East, I lived in the UAE for a year as well, which I didn't mention earlier, and enjoyed my time there. But actually, Oman is one of my favorite places in the Middle East. A little bit more off the beaten track, not as visited, but a beautiful coastline. Throughout the Middle East is incredible hospitality, incredible food, and history. And Oman is a bit of a kind of undercover, really fantastic place to visit. So I would say Oman in the Middle East.
I've been to Oman, so I gotta check it. I've been to Egypt, but never Oman, so I gotta check that
Okay.
out. So
Yep.
interesting stuff. Oh, one last one. Have you been to Antarctica?
So Antarctica
This
is not one of the 193 countries, but I have been there,
Oh
and
yeah,
I
okay, okay.
I did a cruise there. Actually, it was earlier this year, and
Wow.
bucket list trip of a
Yeah.
lifetime. Everything you can imagine, really incredible.
That's like the one last one on my bucket list is Antarctica. Like I've
Yeah,
traveled a decent amount in like Europe and Asia and South America and all that
yeah,
stuff. And for me, I'm like, well, I haven't done all 193 like you, but I've always wanted to go to. I wanted to say I've been to all seven continents. That's kind of
right,
kind of the one
right.
thing I want
Yep.
to say, And for
Yeah,
me, it's like I gotta go to Antarctica. That's like the only thing I kind of go. So
yeah, for sure.
really great sharing. I mean, I really appreciate you being on the call here. I'm gonna, we're gonna end here. I'm gonna give a small sponsor, whatever, small announcement to the people listening out here. So, if you are a flight school, if you are a aviation business, you want to reach out and do some marketing, you need some help growing your business, need help enrolling more pilots in your flight school. Give us a call. It's 314. So that one time. 314-804-1200. And then also check out our website. This is right here. This is ruddermarketing.com. We have a bunch of free resources on our website, SOP template, a checklist for your marketing. We have Google My Business profile optimization. I think there's even more stuff on there. So check it out. A lot of blog posts out there for doing SEO, doing all that stuff. And lastly, I want to say thank you to our featured guest, Sam Goodwin, world traveler, speaker, entrepreneur, NGO, startup man, and going to be a certificated pilot pretty soon. And he's a pilot right now. And he's training, and excited to see him through his journey. And hopefully he has a very fun and exciting check ride coming up soon. So without that, we're going to end here. So reach out to us. If you're a flight school, stop thinking, just do it. All right. See you guys later.